Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the second law, make it attractive today.
Looking at how to make those habits irresistible.
You guys gave us some really interesting excerpts from the book.
Yeah.
And we're excited to really kind of dig into it with you. So basically, this book is all about the science behind making habits stick. And they do that by making them as appealing and attractive as possible, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So are you ready to unlock the secret of irresistible habits?
I am. Let's get into it.
Oh.
We're going to uncover some surprising things about how our brains work and, how we can use those cravings and those desires to our advantage. Even cravings for things that maybe aren't so good for us.
Right.
I'll talk about that.
Exactly. So the book starts off with this fascinating story about baby birds and fake beaks.
Really?
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's about this Dutch scientist, Nico Tinbergen. And he was studying herring gull. I think we all know and love.
Right.
Those are the
beach birds.
Yeah, the beach birds, exactly.
The ones that steal your food.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I've seen them.
He found that the chicks instinctively peck at that red dot on their parents' beaks.
Okay.
To signal that they're hungry. You're like, hey, mom or dad, I'm hungry.
Feed me.
Yeah, exactly. So he decided to test this out with these cardboard cutouts of beaks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so some had a realistic red dot, some had more exaggerated red spots.
Okay.
And so even had multiple red dots.
Okay, so bigger and more more intense.
Super red, yeah.
Got it.
So I'm going to guess those chicks went bonkers for the fake beak with the giant red dots, huh?
You know it. They loved it. They were way more attracted to that exaggerated stimulus.
Really?
Even over their own mother's beak.
It's crazy.
I know, right?
So this revealed this really powerful concept, the concept of supernormal stimuli, right?
Yeah, supernormal stimuli.
Which is basically think of it as these heightened, almost artificial versions of reality.
Yeah, it's they hijack our instincts,
Yeah.
And they make us crave things that aren't necessarily good for us.
That's so interesting. So if a baby bird can be totally tricked by a fake beak.
Right.
Just because it has this more
intense signal.
Yeah, this more intense signal. What does that mean for us humans?
Well, I mean, it means that we are vulnerable to the same sort of trickery. Right. Think about junk. It's engineered to be a supernormal stimulant,
Totally.
Yeah, our ancestors, they evolved crave salt, sugar, fat when it was scarce.
Right.
Because it helped them survive, right? But now we're surrounded by it.
It's everywhere, yeah.
It's everywhere in these hyper-concentrated forms, way more than we would ever find in nature.
So it's our brains are still stuck in that primal mode of
get it while you can.
Get all the sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
Get all the salt.
Exactly.
So those cravings we get for bag of chips or a donut or something, is that just leftover survival instinct from way back when?
That's exactly it, yeah.
Wow.
And it doesn't just stop at food, right? The book even talks about social media and online entertainment as being super normal stimuli, too.
Interesting.
Because they give us those pings of validation, likes, new content, constantly designed to keep us hooked.
It's the algorithm knows us better than we know ourselves, right?
It's true. And, it kind of makes you think about, okay, if these super normal stimuli are so powerful, what's happening in our brains?
Yeah, what's going on in there? What's driving these cravings? Is it a chemical thing?
It is. It all comes down to a neurotransmitter called dopamine.
Dopamine, okay.
Dopamine is not about pleasure itself, though.
Really?
Yeah, it's about the anticipation of a reward.
Okay, so it's the wanting, not the having.
Exact wanting.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's the driving force behind our craving.
So I remember reading in the book about these experiments with rats.
Right.
Did they find that rats without dopamine, they just completely lost all motivation?
They did, yeah. They lost the wanting, even though they could still like things.
Oh, wow. So they weren't sad or anything. They just
didn't care.
Didn't care.
Yeah.
Wow. And what about when they flooded the rats with dopamine?
Oh, then it was the opposite. They became obsessed.
Really?
Yeah, obsessed with doing things, even if the reward was just a nose poke.
So they were just constantly...
Oh, kind of poking away.
Yeah, it's all about getting that dopamine hit.
Wow, so dopamine is kind of the puppet master behind our desires then.
You could say that, yeah.
So when we anticipate that dopamine rush...
Yeah.
From checking our phones or eating a cookie or whatever, we're more likely to just do it again and again.
Yeah, it's like a feedback loop. The more we indulge, the stronger that association becomes.
Got it. Okay. And the harder it is to resist.
So knowing this, knowing that dopamine is behind all of this,
right?
Is there a way to hack our brain to make good habits as irresistible as those bad?
There is. And this is where temptation bundling comes in.
Okay, I love that term, temptation bundling.
It's a really cool concept from the book.
Yeah, tell me more.
Okay, so the book gives this great example of this engineering student, Ronan Byrne, who wanted to exercise more.
Okay.
But, you know, he was like everyone else. He loved Netflix.
Who doesn't love Netflix?
Right. So he was like, how can I make myself exercise?
Right.
So he hacked his stationary bike.
What?
Yeah.
How did he do that?
Well, he basically rigged it up so that Netflix would only play if he was pedaling at a certain...
That's genius.
Isn't that brilliant?
That's amazing.
So he basically bundled his need to exercise with his want to watch Netflix.
That is so clever.
It is. And it worked. Right.
Wow.
He made exercise irresistible.
I love that. So he like kind of tricked his brain into wanting to work out.
Yeah. And this taps into a psychological principle.
Okay.
Called Premack's principle.
Okay.
Which basically says that a less desirable activity can become more appealing.
Okay.
If you pair it with something more desirable.
So it's all about leverage, right?
Exactly. You're leveraging your existing desires.
I love that.
To your advantage.
Okay. So we've talked about supernormal stimuli, hijacking our instincts, and dopamine driving those cravings. But the book also talks about social influence and how that plays a role.
Yeah, social influence is huge. I mean, it's powerful stuff.
Right.
For most of human history, being part of a group meant survival.
Right. Yeah.
So like safe food, all of that. Those who worked together, they survived.
Yeah.
They thrived. And we're still wired that way.
Right. We're like programmed to want to fit in.
Totally.
Yeah. Even today, we look to others to see how we should act.
All the time. Like, think about it. You check reviews before buying something.
Yeah. I do that all the time.
Right. We follow trends, you know, fashion, music.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff. We pick up habits from our friends.
Oh, totally. I've definitely caught myself saying things that my friends say. And I'm like, wait, why am I talking like that?
Happens to all of us. And, you know, it's not always bad.
Right.
Social norms can help us build good habits too, right?
Right. Like if all your friends are super healthy.
Yeah. If everyone's exercising, eating right, reading, you're more likely to do it too.
It's like, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right?
Exactly.
But I guess that means the opposite is true too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it can make it harder to break bad habits if everyone around you is doing them.
For sure. There's this study that showed that a person's chance of becoming obese increased by like 57% if a close friend became obese.
Whoa, that's a big jump.
Yeah, it's like our social circles, they kind of pull us in, you know?
It's almost like peer pressure, like on a deeper level.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just about fitting in.
Yeah.
We also tend to copy those we see as successful or powerful.
Okay, so we're like, I want to be like them, so I'll do what they do.
It's like we're hoping some of that success will rub off, right?
I can see that.
The book calls it imitating the powerful.
Imitating the powerful. I like that.
We're drawn to stuff that seems to work for others.
Right. Like if someone's successful and they have a certain habit, we might think, oh, maybe that habit is part of their success.
Exactly.
So if we're trying to build good habits, maybe surrounding ourselves with people who already do those things.
Yes, that's a great strategy.
Is a good way to go.
Yeah. The book talks about finding your tribe, where that behavior is the norm.
It's like built-in support, right?
Exactly. You're more likely to stay motivated and on track.
So it's not just about forcing yourself to do it. It's about finding people who are already doing it and kind of joining them.
You got it.
Okay. But what about breaking bad habits? Yeah. Like, what if you're trying to quit something?
Yeah.
But everyone around you is still doing it?
That's rough.
Yeah.
Well, the book talks about something called reframing.
Reframing. Okay.
It's like changing how you think about the habit to make it less appealing.
Less appealing.
Yeah. Focus on the positives of not...
So, like, instead of saying, ugh, I have to go to the gym, it's like I get to move my body.
Exactly. Or instead of I can't spend money, it's I'm building financial freedom.
Okay, I see.
You're shifting the focus.
You're changing your mindset about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But sometimes, even with all that, bad habits still feel tempting.
They do.
Is there anything else we can do to make the good habits more appealing?
Yeah, well, the book also mentions creating motivation rituals.
Motivation rituals, okay.
Yeah, like associating a habit with something you enjoy.
Okay.
It becomes a positive trigger, you know?
So, like, when I clean the house, I always listen to my favorite playlist.
There you go. That's a great example.
It's not like I suddenly love cleaning, but it's more enjoyable.
Right. And over time, your brain starts to link that music with the feeling of a clean house accomplishment.
It's a reward system almost.
Yeah, exactly. You're creating positive reinforcement.
That makes sense.
So you're more likely to do it again.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here today. We've talked about all these different things that influence our habits, like those supernormal stimuli, dopamine.
Like social influences, all of that.
Yeah, it's been really eye-opening.
It's fascinating stuff, right?
I'm just thinking, like, with all these things kind of working against us, you know, supernormal stimuli, social pressures.
Yeah.
Does that make us, like, vulnerable to bad habits?
Well, Yeah, I mean, to some degree it does, right? But the book isn't just about, showing us how susceptible we are. It's about giving us tools to break free from those tempting but ultimately harm things,
Right.
It's about understanding why we crave what we crave.
Okay, so it's about going deeper than just like,
oh, I want this donut. It's like, why do I want this donut?
Exactly. It's about those deeper desires, like for connection, for reward.
Right.
For stress relief.
It's like we were talking about earlier, right? Those cravings are coming from somewhere. Okay, so the book uses smoking as an example.
Yeah.
Right, like a lot of people say they smoke to relax.
Right.
To cope with stress.
But the cigarettes, they're not actually doing that.
Right.
They're just damaging lungs.
So it's about seeing through that, like that illusion.
It's a powerful reframe.
Yeah. The book says you're not quitting something, you're gaining freedom.
That's good. I like that.
Right. Freedom from this like harmful thing that you thought was helping you. And you can apply that to other stuff too, right? Like social media.
Yeah.
If you're always checking it for validation, maybe you need to find other ways to feel good about you.
Yeah. Spend time with people you care about.
Right. Do things you enjoy.
Or find a hobby, something that brings you joy.
Yeah. It's about finding healthier ways to meet those needs.
Yeah.
So we're not just like white knuckling our way through life. It's more about understanding what's really going on.
It's about being mindful, about the cues and the rewards and the associations we've built in our brains.
So it's about rewiring those associations.
Exactly.
Right? And we can do that through those things we talked about earlier, like temptation bundling, motivation rituals.
Exactly. Make those good habits more appealing.
Right. Like my cleaning playlist.
There you go.
It makes cleaning not something I hate.
You're creating positive reinforcement.
And eventually it becomes rewarding in itself.
That's the goal.
I feel like we've learned so much today. It's like a whole new way of looking at habits.
Powerful stuff, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's like if our brains are wired to crave certain things, even things that aren't good for us, can we actually design a life where the good habits are the ones we crave the most?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
I think it takes effort, awareness.
Yeah.
You got to pay attention to those triggers, reframe those beliefs.
Right.
Find new ways to meet your needs.
It's like we have to become like habit detectives.
I love that.
Right. Figuring out what's really going on.
Yeah, and experiment.
See what works.
Find what works for you.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I have so much to think about now.
Me too.
I'm sure our listeners do too.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Your habits, they don't define you. You can change them.
Yeah.
Learn about the science, figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
And be patient with yourself.
It's a process.
It is a process.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into irresistible habits.
Thanks for having me.
We've learned so much today about how our brains work, how to make good habits stick.
It's been fun.
And how to break free from those bad ones.
There.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, keep experimenting, keep learning. And until next time, happy habit building.
Happy habit building.